Okay, so welcome everybody to the WIShelter webinar on how to help governments, health and travel organizations to deploy the WIShelter COVID-19 Trusted Digital Health Passport on the blockchain. As I was saying, WIShelter has been organizing those webinars in the last 4 months, trying to understand the consequences of the current pandemic and how, as industry experts, we can provide the best advice in launching initiatives that could help government, health organization, and in this particular case of today webinar, also travel organizations, which, as you know, they are being quite exposed to the current crisis. So we have an amazing panel with us. This time we brought experts from the spectrum, as we would like to review everything, not only the technology aspect, but also the policy issues, the integration and international standards issues, the government positions with some representatives from government, and also the academia and private sector. So we have a panel. I'm just going to introduce the panel as they are going to be presenting. So we have Don Tasco. Don is a very famous internet pioneer. He coined many of the words now we use on the internet, like digital economy, like blockchain revolution. He's the founder of the Blockchain Research Institute, and Don is going to give us his insights on how the blockchain is being used in a very concrete and pragmatic ways around the world. Then we're going to have Gianfranco Moi. He's the Digital Transformation Officer of the State of Geneva. He will also give us his insight on how Geneva is positioned as a major hub, what we call the trust hub. Geneva is one of the cities in the world where you have third trusted party, international organizations are here. Many of them, including obviously WHO, working very actively on the pandemic situation. And we also have many standards organizations, private sector, you know, even new initiatives on blockchain like Libra from Facebook. They are located in Geneva. So he will give us his insight on how Geneva and the state in Geneva in particular, they are positioning themselves to become one of the major players in this blockchain ecosystem that we are all building together. Then we're going to be moving into the international organization. So we have the director of ITS and CIO of IATA, the International Airline Transport Association, which is the United Nations specialized agency handling international trade, Pascal Buchner. And Pascal will also give us his insight from the international organization perspective, what they are doing and how they are advising governments to find solutions in order to let the airline industry, which has been highly affected by the COVID situation, to rebirth, basically, as in many countries, this industry has been totally destroyed in terms of valuation and possibility of reactivating themselves. We then have Isidore Chirichiello, which is the Chief Information Digital Innovation Officer of TAG Aviation, a private plane aviation company. So he also will give us his practical insights on how this industry is surviving this crisis. And he's also, as a technologist, he's also building the platform effect on his organization. He will give us some insights about that. Then we have Christina Dolan, founder and organizer at Dream Eat Code. Is also the CEO and founder of Inside Chains, work at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and very active in both in the United States and internationally, also in Spain, with companies that she has been founded around the blockchain usage. Then we have Jeffrey Lippman, old friend. Jeffrey and I, we met many years ago when he was in the United Nations World Tourist Organization. Now he's the co-founder of the SunX program and he's also now launching Sun Initiative with WIShelter, and he will give us today a world first of a very interesting initiative that will be launched tomorrow within a WISE Travel. And then we have Arthur Breeze, Professor of Finance, IMD in Lausanne, Director of the IMD World Competitiveness Center, member of the board, and a very active person, both in social media, giving courses around the world, helping government, advising multinationals, on the disruptions that we're all facing. So first of all, I would like to thank the panelists for their contribution and their availability to be with us today. And without more, I would like to just open the floor. We're gonna have the discussions for each participant around 8 minutes, and then we're gonna have a Q&A session. If participants are able to communicate their questions through the Q&A feature in Zoom. Also, it's a chatting feature. Some of the questions will be answered by the terminal. Others will be activated directly, and we will address those questions to the correspondent participants. So without more, I give the floor to Don. And once again, I thank everybody for joining us today on this webinar. Don, the floor is yours. Don, you have to, sorry, Don, you have, yeah, microphone, yeah. Speaker, yeah.
My apologies. Zoom, we're all getting used to this crazy environment, aren't we? I'm delighted to do this, and I have great admiration for WISekey. It's one of the founding members of the Blockchain Research Institute. They have extraordinary technology. This is where I am right now. I've been quarantined up here with my extended family on the lake for the last, well, we're in our 5th month now. We were early adopters of the social distancing strategy. And, but this is a truly extraordinary situation. And it's really, to me, a turning point in human history. This pandemic is going to cause very profound changes to our economy, our behavior, our society. Some leaders and governments that failed the challenge will be replaced, and they should. Many institutions will be scrutinized, hopefully for the better. And the pandemic has also revealed some deep problems in our systems for innovation, for commerce, data, technology, infrastructure. And the pandemic has a lot to do with data or lack of it. And clinicians, epidemiologists, government officials have been working in the dark. We have no early warning systems. Our supply chains have failed us. Consumers lacking transparency and fear of hoarded goods and services. And surely this is a time when we can think about reinventing technology to prevent something like this from occurring in the future, and even to stop this one in its tracks now, and also to help us rebuild the economy and move forward with a successful economy. And fortunately, the digital age is entering a second era. First era, mainframes, minis, PCs, the internet, the web, mobile web, social media, the cloud, big data, and now technology is infusing itself into everything. The physical world, and WISekey has billions of, is transforming billions of inert objects into animated devices that communicate, and soon we'll be doing transactions. We have the Internet of Things. We have technology that does things that it wasn't programmed to do. And to us, the foundational technology for the second era is, in fact, blockchain. For 40 years, we've had an Internet of Information. Now we're getting an Internet of Value, or anything of value from money, securities, the data in our identities, health records, airline tickets, you name it, can be managed, stored, transacted in a secure and private way, and where trust is not achieved by a middleman, it's achieved by cryptography, collaboration, and some clever code. Now, at the Blockchain Research Institute, we have 110 projects exploring all kinds of different areas, and a subset of these is called Blockchain for Good. And what I'd like to do in the next 7 minutes is focus on public health. Surely it's time to reinvent public health. And there are a lot of elements here. The manufacturers of all the equipment, pharmaceuticals, and so on. There are wholesalers and supply chains, pharmacies that have to deal not just with goods, but patient records, medical facilities that are brimming with smart devices that can communicate and learn, and insurance companies who are having a real struggle in this environment. So We've been doing some work on blockchain and pandemics, and I'd like to just spend a minute each on 5 opportunities. First is a supply chain. How can it be that we can't get a paper mask to a frontline worker? And to me and to us here, blockchain is the new supply chain. You think about this is a $50 trillion industry, and you got trains and boats and planes and trucks and all kinds of institutions, intermediaries, and escrow agents, and borders, and tax authorities, and there are all kinds of devices, railway cars, and that right now you know what's in a railway car because it has a piece of paper in an envelope up inside the car. We have traditional systems of EDI and ERP and so on. Imagine if all of that were a state where real time people, organizations, and things were communicating and shared a common view of the truth, real time, where there could be micro transactions, devices purchasing things and establishing a reputation as a trustworthy device, where we could have smart payments and so on. And blockchain has a great promise there. And especially in a time of pandemic, we could be tracking and procuring medical supplies with technology that is smart and communicates. We could know the authenticity of a ventilator. Where did it come from? Is it a valid ventilator? Who's handled it? And so on. All of the logistics, the transport, and the custody of these devices. Fred Smith, CEO of FedEx, said, "We invented the chain of custody, that idea." He said this to me in front of a large audience of thousands of people. And now we're going to do it again. We're going to rebuild the logistics industry around blockchain. Moog used to manufacture precision air parts and then ship them to Boeing and Airbus. Now they 3D print these parts in the Boeing factory using blockchain as a transactional platform, and they're now doing this for medical supplies and ventilators. So just out, my new book is called Supply Chain Revolution: How Blockchain Technology is Transforming the Global Flow of Assets. And it started shipping a week ago on Amazon.com. Secondly, health data. I mean, we lack the data that we need. And this is part of a broader issue of our identity that perhaps we'll talk about later. But we create all this data. Our bodies create this data. More broadly, the transactions that we do, the location that we have, the test results that we get, the medications we take, and so on. And our heart rate is being captured by devices, and soon our temperature and whether or not we're coughing. But all of that is captured by big institution that's kept in silos. Imagine a self-sovereign healthcare record where state mandates anonymized civilian data about critical health information, where we control our identities and they provide pertinent health information that helps with our treatment, but there are incentive systems where we make that data available, perhaps in an anonymized way or otherwise. And what you would have is data, real-time health data that represents the entire population. How extraordinary. Pandemic, early warning systems stop it in its tracks. And of course, and we're talking about today, you could have a health certification attached to an individual's identity. We can have our cake and eat it too. We can have privacy and protect our own data at the same time, making data available to solve a problem like this. I'm running out of time, so I'll just tell you, we've been talking about incentives. I mean, you can get governments and states to force people to behave well, or you can get people to act with integrity. And we've done some work on the tokenization of value to create incentives for good behavior. How about skills? How do we get the right people? Well, skills in a talent registry for license and staffing. We create issuing medical certifications on a blockchain, and we can build a global medical talent marketplace. And then coming out of this, how do we rebuild the economy? There's much to be done, but it turns out that one of the problems with cash, it's not just that it's a foundation of organized crime, the global drug industry, and tax evasion, and a bunch of other problems. It's dirty, and it carries viruses. So could we have not just self-organizing cash like Bitcoin or corporate cash like Libra, but get ready for state-based or central bank digital currencies being led by China, be first out across One Belt, One Road, into Asia, into Africa, and threatening to become replace the US dollar as the currency of record. So the Fed is scrambling, and there's just a ton of activity. And you heard it here first, another new book by Alex Tapscott called The Financial Services Revolution, How Blockchain is Transforming Money Markets and Banking, and it digs into all of this. So we could have digital cash. Supply chain finance could stimulate the economy, and trade finance is pretty much moving to blockchain. Blockchain can be used for insurance, risk management, and also for building high performance business models in every industry. So that's a quick tour in 10 minutes of a 1-hour presentation. If you want to know more about it, this report is publicly available now, and it's a blockchain research institute.com, and you can get the report there. These are big changes. Can we do this? My view is that the future is not something to be predicted. The future is something to be achieved. We can achieve a very different future if we will it. So thanks very much, Carlos. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Don, for this very comprehensive introduction, which will guide us during the presentation. We'll come back to you later on very important issues related to identity, trust, and how we can engineer the next generation internet, because this is what blockchain is all about, right? So I would like to introduce now Gianfranco Moi. One of the key words that we all need to take into consideration is the one which is trust, confiance, confianza, which is the new word that really is being represented everywhere around the world. Trust is becoming paramount in our current society. And Geneva, through different initiatives, not only with us, but other initiatives being launched at cantonal level, and even with other cantons like the Trust Valley and the Trust Protocol Association in Geneva, where the Geneva State helped WIShelter to launch last year, is a major player in this trust ecosystem. Basically, the way I see it, Geneva is the trust hub, because as I mentioned in my introduction, all the organizations that they have something to do with trust, what we call third trusted parties, are in Geneva, whether it's ITU handling telcos, mobile standardization, 4G, 5G, etc., where is WHO on health, where is WTO on trade, where is WIPO on intellectual property, all these massive ecosystem of international organizations, and many of them, they are still on the analog age, and they are transforming themselves through digital transformation. Is a huge opportunity. IATA is obviously another one we have represented here today. So I would like to introduce Gianfranco as the person that is putting the strategy behind the Geneva government. Your views, Gianfranco, on how you see we can play a factual and concrete role here in Geneva to solve some of the issues that Don just raised on his presentation.
Okay, hi. Well, thank you, Carlos, for this comprehensive introduction. And we can tell that you are from Geneva, as much as you know about all that is going on in our small canton. Geneva is well known, actually, worldwide, but in fact, I'm not sure that people really have an understanding of our geographical situation, which I would like to explain a little bit because it's important for this issue that we're discussing about safety, travel, and the impact on the economy as well. And so the state of Geneva is home to about 500,000 people, but we also consider the urban area that includes about twice that population. 1 million people live in what we call Grand Genève. And Geneva is almost a French enclave, if you want, in the territory. And 80% of our border is with neighboring France. So because of the good economy we enjoy, there are a lot of people who are interested in taking advantage of work that is done in Switzerland, but at the same time take advantage of also the differential of the economy with the neighboring France. So daily we have about 70,000 people cross the border, come and work in Geneva. We also have, as you mentioned, many international organizations and many large companies, large companies headquarters. And of course, that creates also lots of needs for international travel. So our airport in Geneva has about 18 million travelers during the year. So you can imagine that closing the border had a major impact on the economy and everything else that is happening here in Geneva. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention, because that explains also the way we have been reacting to it, and also some of the programs and the opportunities that we foresee coming up as we organize ourselves to face this type of situation. It's like many parts of the world, there's been a major change in the economic and social behavior due to the measures taken to slow down the spread of the pandemic. And we have had a huge boost in adoption of digital technology. So many platforms for services, for delivery, for remote work, entertainment have really increased by tenfold in terms of their usage. But unfortunately, we also have experienced an increase in cyber crimes. And I was talking to the person who is in charge of the Institute, Criminology Institute, Cyber Criminology Institute in Geneva, and they reported that they had recorded 3 times the amount of crimes. And of course, I mean, in Switzerland, people are fairly, I would say, shy about disclosing too much information. There's this culture of the confidentiality, and so we can imagine that this is probably underestimated as far as the number of additional crimes that have been committed. So the question of the trust online is very key to this whole issue. I mean, yes, we have been increasing our activities online, but are we safer online today? And as we shift more towards a digital world, this issue becomes a very pressing and important issue to resolve. And it's very much tied to the notion of electronic identity as well. I would say that fortunately we have the tools to address that. We have a lot of technologies, and we can use encryption, we can use blockchain, as was mentioned by Don. We can use digital signature, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and PKI, etc. So we are well equipped. Unfortunately, all this equipment is also available to people who are committing cyber crimes. And so where can we have an edge on these people? And I believe that the solution is a better collaboration to fight against cyber crimes. So sharing information is crucial. But again, we need to educate people, because sharing information, we need to share information with the right people and not too much of it. So there is the privacy issue that comes to play here that is in contention with this collaboration issue. So these are important things to keep in balance. And people are becoming increasingly wary about the centralized platforms controlled by a small group of people, both either enterprises or even governments. So we need to take that into account when we think about solving this type of problem. So more transparency, more security, protection, control is required, and all that has to be basically encouraged through education. But there is also a tendency to give all that away for convenience. And that's what we've experienced really with the internet, is people are willing to part with the privacy and the personal data and things that they wouldn't actually even disclose to their priest or on the internet, on Facebook, because it's so convenient to communicate. So we believe this trust issue is very key to solving this problem of better usage of the internet. And we believe that Geneva is uniquely positioned to define the rules of this better governance for the digital world. and can be done in collaboration with international organizations. So it is a very fertile ground where we can run some pilot projects that could then be scaled up to maybe a global dimension. There is also an incredible amount of talent here in around Geneva. I think from both the academic, but also international organizations, a lot of knowledge about financial, legal, global governance, and all that research and development can be done, then can be capitalized, and then maybe generalized and also provided to the world. So we believe there is a big opportunity that lies ahead of us with this transition to more digital. And we have been taking some actions to promote these activities of collaboration among the different players. You, Carlos, mentioned that we have supported the Protocol Trust Association. That's one of the initiatives, and we are now developing some concrete projects around electronic identity and health passport, which can maybe elaborate later in the Q&A session. We have also created a wider frame for collaboration on the Western Switzerland, that is the French-speaking part, where we're trying to federate all the players, and we are currently counting about 500 organizations that could be joining this group to better collaborate, and we're already starting to see some projects coming in. We're going to have a call for open call for projects in October will be the formal launch of this new organization called the Trust Valley. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gianfranco. Yeah, I will say that even as the commitment of WISekey to be in Geneva, you know, when I left the United Nations after 15 years in the UN in Geneva, my vision was that every single person on earth should own its digital identity. That was kind of mission for me when I was on the public sector, as you are now. And then I basically built a NASDAQ listed company on that vision. And the possibilities of going to Silicon Valley or Shenzhen or many other places has been endless. But I knew that this trust uniqueness of Geneva, what I call Geneva is the Saudi Arabia of digital data, because data is the new oil. And that oil is located in Geneva now. Now we need to know how to extract the oil, extract that data from so many silos, make that data available, distribute that data through blockchain technology, and basically share that wealth of knowledge to the rest of the world. So it is a very interesting city, a state, and I thank you for sharing those inputs with us, because it's very important to highlight the uniqueness that Geneva has. So moving, thank you, and I'll come back to you later on the different concrete projects. So now we are going to be moving to a sector which has been highly affected by the COVID situation, which is the airline sector. So I have the pleasure, honor to introduce Pascal. And Pascal is also located in Geneva. IATA headquarters are in Geneva. And you are a technologist. We have been doing roundtables in Davos about the use of blockchain. What concrete applications, Pascal, are you developing in IATA to really help this distressed sector now, which is the airline industry? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Carlos. And you know, we've been working with WISekey on digitalization of supply chain, and so we had a project in the cargo business to digitalize, all the paperwork that we have in the cargo business. But at the moment, if you want to have a very concrete example, because of the crisis, I can talk about the work that we are doing today about contactless travel application. I'm sure that you understand that 80% of our business has been shut down. The aviation system was never designed to be stopped, and it has been stopped within 2 weeks. And nobody has an idea how we will be able to restart actually this industry. I'm not going to talk about on the operational side the work that we have to do to maintain the certification of the aircraft, the certification of the pilot, and also to work with all the airports in order to maintain the good operating standing. So I will talk more about the passenger and the authorities. Our priority at the moment is really to restart our industry, and to restart our industry, we need to restore the confidence that both the authorities and the passenger have in the safety of flight. So passenger has to be convinced that it is safe to fly, that they will not be contaminated because they are taking a flight. And of course, the regulators and the authorities also, they have to be convinced also that they are not creating a risk for the passenger if they allow, international flights. So really, the key priority for us is about the trust and the confidence. And we have to do it in a way that also will protect the interests of the passenger, whether it is in terms of data privacy protection, or whether it is in terms also of cyber security. And so the same way that the payment industry has been able to move from cash to a contactless payment within 2 weeks, we want also to move to what we call contactless travel, which is a way to bring your own identity into the travel space, in order, of course, to reduce, all the contact that you will have, whether you are at the airport, whether you are in your flight, or when you arrive at your destination. And so the work that we are doing today, we are working with all our members and with all the aviation industry. So it's about collaboration. We are working also with the regulators. We are very close with ICAO, so the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is part of the UN and in charge of the commercial aviation, in order to define all the standards that will allow us to fly safely, and including biosafety. So the vision that we have is that we are developing an application, or we are working, actually we are not developing an application, we are working on standards, because the role of IATA is to define standards, is to identify innovation, to define standards, to allow this standard to be implemented through all the industry. And last thing, but which is the most important, also to allow the regulators to approve these standards. And so what we are doing, we are working with our members and with all the airports in the world and with all the supplier in our industry to develop a contactless application where the passenger will be able to upload his passport. He will be able to upload his picture, and then he will be able, of course, to do a data verification on his mobile phone, and the data will be stored only on the mobile phone. So one of the the idea that we have, or something that is really important for us, is that we don't want to send everywhere confidential information. We want that all the confidential information remains under the control of the passenger on his mobile phone. And what we want to do, we want to build a decentralized identity, and we will use blockchain for that, in order to push this data from the mobile phone of the passenger to all the partners that needs to be included in the workflow. So to simplify it, once you have loaded your passport on your phone, you will have a token that will be stored in a blockchain, and this token, for example, will be used by the governance authority, for example, the passport issuer, to enter record that will attest the validity of your passport. And if you need also to have a medical certificate, you will use also this decentralized identity also to update the blockchain with the record showing that, of course, you can travel safely. So all this chain will be of course, in the blockchain, but the association between the token or your decentralized identity and your own identity will be done only on your cell phone. And with that, you will be able to go to the airport. You will be able to avoid to queue in order, to clear the border control, because everything will be done, remotely, contactless, within actually the blockchain. So it will allow also to regulate the flow in the airport, to avoid queues at the border controls or queues at the gate. And so it will also allow to reduce the risk of contact between people, and of course to reduce the risk of contamination. And what IATA does in this role is not only working with the industry expert to define what will be the technology, what will be the protocol that we will use, but we are also working with all the stakeholders to define the governance, because you need to have a proper governance. Carlos, you know better than me that any blockchain is as good as the governance that you put on it. And so we are trying to address all the aspects of the innovation, not only the standards and the availability of this innovation globally in the world, but also the governance that will go with, provided that we IATA, we are acting at the global level. So we have to bring together all the regions of the world.
Thank you very much, Pascal. It's really encouraging to have an international organization with your breadth and scope handling this international standardization process, because as you know, as well as me, or even better than me, identity is geopolitical. It's very hard to bring everybody to agree on a common identity. It is related to, especially when we are moving the identity to the digital world, and then therefore you need cryptographic keys, and you have to locate those keys at national level, which is what WISekey has been doing for 22 years. So we know the complexity on creating the interoperability requirements. As you very well say, blockchain is the solution for decentralization and verification, because you don't need to centralize the data, but it's not that good when you're handling the trust element, especially who owns the cryptographic key and all that. So having an international organization looking into this is unique in the history. I never saw that before. I have been trying to encourage international organizations to, especially because your stakeholders are governments, to link into that. And because you are handling such an important sector, which is the airline industry, and the current crisis, I think it's a phenomenal momentum now to get it done and done once for good. I think that will accelerate the next generation internet by years, So congratulations for that. I'll come back to you later after we discuss with Jeffrey a bit what he's doing as well on the tourist side of the thing, as travel and tourism, it goes together, right? And there's many potential synergy. But before that, I'll pass the floor now to Pascal. Very similar situation. He's handling private jets. So Pascal, you're also technologies. I think you will agree to everything that Pascal has said. Sorry, and the floor is yours.
Isidore,
yeah. Sorry, Isidore. The floor is yours.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Carlos. Yes, in a private jet, I enjoyed what Pascal told. We are facing exactly the picture is exactly the same. The world during the crisis in the aviation has stopped from the day before and the day after. All the aircraft were parked on the airport, and then you can imagine the impact from the economic situation for a company like us. Yes, we are also, you can imagine we are running more than 120 aircraft from China to Europe. This pandemic has started in China already. This means for our business, all the operation a few months before that, the Europe moved to the quarantine, all of that. We had already a few experience from our colleague in Hong Kong, Beijing, all of this area, Shanghai, And then what we applied there, we apply exactly the same here in the Europe just a few months after. Now, just few words. We are already as a company, we are already well. I would say in terms of technology, digitalization, we are using a lot of paperless apps for customer experience, operation, supply chain. One thing that after this pandemic, all the people working from home, running operations, they realized that how the company were already digitalized. And then when the people were working from office on daily basis, they had the technologies, but they are not really collaborate with the office, just the colleague just near to the office on the floor. We were using a collaboration less than during from home. And then in 3 days, we moved to a complete without stress from home. I would say 50% of the person. Now, what Pascal told this supply chain, there is one thing where it is really common. It's clear. The only from operations, these are already started again, but the challenge now for the aviation is the passenger, is to be safe, to make sure that everything is going in the right way. The confidence will come back, etc. I would say between the commercial aviation to the private aviation, there is one main difference: is the customer. In the customer in commercial aviation, you need to have a full aircraft before to go to fly. But in a private aviation, you could have one aircraft with one customer on board, or 2 persons on 10 people. You see, from the economic point of view, it is completely different. The common point also, what we have is all the passport, all of these documents that they need. It's clear in private aviation, in terms of regulation, is exactly the same. But when you arrive at the airport, also is in a less for 10 minutes you are in the aircraft. You know, we are running paperless with passport, all of this type of the application. The only missing point where it is very interesting, we are not using this blockchain technologies, because we don't have any for the moment any needs. But it could be good for us also to join some partnership in order to make sure that the document which is available into an apps like a passport is authenticated from the legislation, etc. And this is very, very interesting. Now, joining again what Pascal told, around there is a lot of stakeholders, and you know, to agree with the blockchain technologies to make sure that all this is my perception, to align all the stakeholders around the standard. This is the challenge, I would say, from my point of view. Yes, this is the current situation that we are in TAG Aviation. In reverse to the, I'm just coming back in the economic. For us, it is already the customer, the aircraft is already flying into the country where it is open. Okay, we started to fly. We are around 70% of our aircraft are already flying. And this is the big difference between commercial aviation and private aviation. You know, for an owner of an aircraft, what is interesting is to go, I don't know, in London to do some business, or he will use these aircraft for a vacation. And then for us, the business is back already at the 70% of the capacity. And this is our story, I would say. Oh, I don't hear you.
Sorry. So thank you very much, Isidore. We'll come back to you later on what we wanted to frame here, which is concrete solutions on how we can not only help each individual agency, but collectively also have an impact in what we are trying to achieve. And as you know, there's an initiative that was started by WIShelter and the Geneva government that has been expanding now with many other stakeholders. BRI is also involved through the work of Don Task with the Geneva government. And what we are trying to solve all the issues, because as you say, this is a complex thing. This is not only one perspective, it's not only launching an app, it's how multi-stakeholders can participate in a way that everybody gets the benefit from the technology. So on the technology, I would like now to introduce Christina. So Christina, you're very active in everything which is related to blockchain. You have done a lot of projects, very concrete applications. So what is your view of this discussion that we are having here between IATA, Pascal with IATA, but also now Isidore? How can we actively and in a concrete way help this industry that needs to be helped? Otherwise, it's going to have huge consequences in the global economy. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Amazing group of people here and very interesting viewpoints. I mean, first I have to say, Gianfranco, your comments on security, and of course on Carlos. I'm an electrical engineer, computer scientist, and I have been at the forefront of this technological evolution that's made data so valuable. And security is a very big part of that, right? And the hackers are in business too, right? So you look at some of the data, Aon, an insurance company, that has said that over 80% of the S&P is now based on digital and non-tangible assets, right? I mean, it's more than doubled in a very short period of time. And so, of course, the hackers are in business for being able to move that, because I've always said it's much easier to steal data and sell it, especially health data, which is now apparently becoming more valuable than financial data. It's much easier to steal data and sell it than it is to go to the museum and try to steal a painting and then try to sell it in the black market. And so we sort of live in an interesting time. And when you look at sort of Industry 4.0 and you look at all of these technologies and this data in the center, and you start thinking about the fact that Bloomberg has said a couple of years ago that 96% of organizations don't even figure out what to do with their data, right? It's this dark data. They're not in any way figuring out a strategy on how to use that. The data doesn't live behind a user interface in a database anymore. It's it's owned by an airplane business, and it's held in an app, and it's in IoT devices. And so being able to come up with new models that serve people means that you have to take this connected world with all of this data oozing around, find ways to suck that in and create value out of that. And I don't think that data science is it's really it's not that old, right? It's the true data science where you're using lots and lots of data to understand businesses and create new models that cross across different siloed systems. Now I'm here in New York in the United States, and I have a business I co-founded called Additum in Europe. And in Europe with GDPR, you own your health data. In the United States, you don't own your health data. And So as a result of that, these are two different models with respect to thinking about all these technologies and rails and organizations and pulling this together in order to be able to serve better, be able to deal with all of these issues. When it's all siloed together, locked in these systems, it's very difficult. Now, what's interesting about blockchain, and I've actually been working with regulators in Europe around AMLD5 and the travel rule, which is really about understanding the long history about where money has come from. And in this crypto space, everyone's like, oh, it's so scary, drug addicts are using this. And what's really interesting is that you have companies like CoinFirm, Chainalysis, and they create these databases of money that's come from sort of illicit means, either the dark web or mixers or stolen from Binance. And so it's very easy to see the whole journey across many different siloed systems. I would actually say that if you look at traditional financial systems, you don't have that visibility. And we've been working with the final solution with the insurance companies, because they're recognizing that through COVID, there has been so much data theft and phishing and fake financial transactions. They don't even know if they can insure that sector anymore, right? So back to Gianfranco, the data, and of course, Carlos, data has become one of these things that the average person doesn't know how to store. It doesn't know how to protect it. Now, I'm an electrical engineer. I went to MIT. I've had my SIM card on my phone ported 3 times. I've had my Twitter, which had 100,000 followers, completely attacked, because that's one of the things the hackers like to do. And so when we talk about protecting and putting into the blockchain, the use case around how you protect that data is absolutely critical. I'm working with a FIDO organization, Crayonic, in Europe around this, because people don't really know how to protect their bank accounts. They don't know how to protect their phones, their social media. There's still people who use the word password to solve their password. And so I think that blockchain has, it's a networked technology. It sucks in data. It collects data across siloed systems that are all locked up. And there are a variety of different blockchain systems, and the cryptography that's been explored, this whole ICO movement was really a hyper innovation phase in which a lot of people explored a lot of ideas and cross-pollinated. And, I created a couple of insurtechs in that space. But I think what's interesting is that you're talking about, Industry 4.0 with a lot of rails, a lot of data. And this data is extremely valuable, because I do think that if you understand the data, think in the airline space, for example, one of the things that when you look at COVID, people are less likely to transmit when they're sitting silently in a seat versus running through the streets in a protest without their masks on, right? Because they're screaming, they're yelling and spraying all of the germs all over the place. And so data is a great mechanism by which to manage situations, but I don't necessarily think that from a security perspective, the average person knows how to protect their data. I don't think that the ecosystems are there yet. There's a lot of really valuable data that's locked in a lot of siloed systems. And just one thing in terms of what Dawn was talking about, now, of course, as a result of Facebook last year, and you look at Davos, and like 70, 80 countries are now looking at digital currencies, but and everybody wants to be the reserve currency, right? But for those of us who've actually studied the economics and been in the financial space, one of the things that's kind of interesting is that look at all the levers that have been pushed during the COVID crisis in order to get money and liquidity out there, right? And so once, this digital dollar, once you put that dollar into the Fed wallet, right, there's no fractional use of that, right? There's been this whole movement. I'm a co-founder in an open banking scenario, and I think that that's opened up a lot of capital that's made that available for small and medium businesses, which are 99% of the businesses, and they're suffering the most during COVID. So I think that when you think about using this digital money, you really have to think about it within the context of small and medium businesses, capital, security, how people manage their money, and also this whole area of capital, which is what drives economies. And I think that right now, with 99% of businesses being small and medium, if you don't have a mechanism by which to have a digital economy that fuels capital for these types of companies, which have less access to it, right? And large banks are lending less. So anyway, I think I've consumed a good chunk of my time, but I want to open it up for questions, because I'm more of the controversial person here, because I like to build solutions and recognize the things that don't work and the things that work. And I think that a lot of organizations have data, but they don't have strategies by which to implement them.
Thank you very much, Christina. Yes, I fully agree. I think the data, the understanding of data is not yet there, and people need to. That's why I think international standards and how to use that data, the ownership of that data, how to segregate the data in ways that you're not disclosing confidential information, that needs still to be done in order to create the foundation. I'll come back to you later in some concrete questions around that. So one of the issues that goes in the other side of the spectrum on the airline industry is the tourist industry. Last webinar, we had UNCTAD with us, the United Nations Conference for Trade and Development, and we were discussing about the consequences. Actually, 2.2 trillion or 2.8 of the global GDP will be lost in the next 8 months if we don't come in with a solution on COVID. So the account is already 1.2 trillion of the global tourist sector set to lose. So this is huge, and this affects developing countries in priority because they are the receiving countries, and their industry concentration and economic concentration is on tourists. We see the consequences already in Europe, in Spain, in Italy, but imagine Kenya, imagine Zimbabwe, countries that they really need tourists. So it is urgent and needed to find solutions that at the same time will not compromise sustainability. Obviously, there is a small and very weak equilibrium between tourist sustainability and how we can help those countries. And we have here one of the best world experts on it, which is Geoffrey. So Geoffrey, what is the solution? Do you have a pragmatic approach to this, and how we can get out of this crisis in a way that at the same time we help the sustainability development that I know you are so keen to solve? We don't hear you well. Try again, Geoffrey. Do you hear Geoffrey? No. No, Geoffrey, there is some issues with your microphone.
Geoffrey, maybe you can disconnect and reconnect.
Maybe you disconnect and you connect, and I may just give the floor to Arturo, and after I come back to you, because in any case, it is a very good conclusion comments. So Arturo, IMD, can you help us to put some processing or thinking? I mean, you are a master of that. How can we channel all these great ideas and willingness in a way that you can, through academia, introduce that to decision makers of the world, whether it's governments or international organizations or the web, and be part of this great reset that Davos is going to be announcing in January. But I think a lot of process needs to be introduced in this discussion. So maybe you can highlight us on that. And please, the microphone as well, you're muting.
Hopefully so, Carlos. And you know, being an expert on everything, it means that I'm an expert on nothing. And I think I can put some things together in your discussion. You know, what I think what this crisis has shown certainly is the importance of technology in our lives. And the best proof is what we're doing right now. And I think on that front, we need to make advances for the future. Certainly, health is going to be a key issue in our future, but I think the competitiveness, you know, which is my theme, the competitiveness of countries is going to depend a lot also on the ability of countries to implement new technology. And I think, you know, if I can summarize the lessons that I have been collecting over the last month of the pandemic related to technology, the first one to me is that digital talent is going to be extremely important in the coming years, certainly. And I think many of the things that you have said, they apply to many of us that possess that talent. But you know, the difference across countries in terms of digital talent and knowledge is massive. And I think if we want to have global solutions to our global problems, we also need to develop digital talent in some countries. As you know, the outcome of the COVID-19 crisis across the globe has been different depending on the digital savviness of people in different countries, from Saudi Arabia to Argentina. And that's, I think, key to me. The second lesson is that we need better technology regulation. And this applies to blockchain, this applies to the token economy, this applies, Christina was talking about cryptocurrency, this applies to cryptocurrencies as well. And I think there are two important issues here. First, digital regulation is going to be a key competitive advantage of countries. But second, and that's something that we have learned in the last month, is that we need global standards. We need global standards for privacy, for data security, but we also need a global standards for blockchain, for cryptocurrencies. And if we manage to do that, if we manage to achieve that, I think we are going to create a lot of value. That is, part of the value that we have lost in the current crisis, we are going to recover it little by little. And related to that,
Geoffrey, you must cut the time.
Yeah, I think there's a sound echo in your mobile. Sorry, go ahead, please.
No problem. You know, if this had happened 3 months ago, we would be all in panic. But after so many webinars and Zoom and so on, you know, this is part of our lives. So anyway, so everything is great. So related to this aspect on regulation, one of the key advantages of technology, and particularly of blockchain, of which I'm a strong advocate, as many of you, is that blockchain is going to allow us to monetize many of our assets. And this has two key advantages. One is going to benefit countries in emerging markets, particularly in Africa, the most. So it's going to be a leveler of income inequality in the future. But related to that, I think health being one of our most important intangible assets, we will be able to monetize that. It is something that I had not thought about a lot before the crisis. That is, in my first book on blockchain, where I was addressing the social impact of blockchain technology, I was actually referring to this aspect of the technology that can monetize assets, like, for example, human capital or trust that could not be monetized before. But health is another important intangible asset that can be monetized through technology. And this is going to give a lot of advantages to people. And I'm not talking about monetizing in the finance professor sense. I'm talking about being able to create value out of our health, okay, and the data that this relates to our health. I think that's very important, and that's a lesson that I think governments should learn for the future and for the coming years. Last 2 points. I think blockchain technology in general, are going to be key in the future to redefine the way how we work and the way how we are rewarded. That is the world of jobs and pay. Because obviously the COVID-19 pandemic is changing the way how we work, but it's also going to redefine the type of jobs that we do. And blockchain and its applications are going to allow us to work in a different way. That actually, they're going to redefine the concept of a job and transform it into a paid task, whatever it means. Final point. Some of you were talking, Carlos, you mentioned that this issue of trust. I re-emphasize this point that we have made about blockchain technology for years already. I think blockchain does not formalize trust necessarily. I think blockchain removes the need to have trust, which is extremely important in the financial world. And that is a key advantage in the coming decades, because the lack of trust has been visible across countries in the current pandemic. We don't like people coming from China because they can bring the virus. We don't like Italians in Switzerland because they bring the virus. We don't allow, Switzerland has released a list of 42 countries today of countries whose travelers are not welcome, or at least they have to go through quarantine. I think that if we manage to eliminate the need for trust in our economies and move much more into economies of data or of value, as Dan was mentioning at the beginning, then we can become much better societies, and we can make people wealthier in all senses. I'm looking forward to discussion about these things, and I hope that this puts some things together that you have been discussing.
Arturo, thank you very much. And yeah, I think this eliminate the need for trust concept is exactly what it is. I think the trust deficit that we are having, it's just a consequence that we don't necessarily need trust, or at least not the way analog trust was provided in the past generations. I mean, we are entering into a trust and verify model on where distributed pieces of trust needs to be put together in order to constitute what I will call a qualified trusted decision, right? So this concept is very interesting. It goes in line with everything we do in terms of cryptography and the delegation of the trust through the chain. So that's a very interesting concept, which actually needs to be embedded into the coding itself. So I don't know if Jeffrey, are you back? Can you test us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's perfect now. Great.
Okay. This is the problem of a non-technical person working in the digital space. I have three devices and they all screwed up except this one, which was the one I didn't think would work. Look, I apologize for any confusion. I have a very specific element to talk about today, as you know, Carlos, and it's a very timely meeting. But I want to talk just before that. I want to make two general comments on the current situation that we find ourselves in. One on the global situation and one on travel and tourism. And let me just say also for you, Pascal, I spent the first 20 years of my life in IATA. So I'm very conscious of the issues that you've raised about having good standards in this area. If you're to have any system at all, our system is based on standards. And I heard the other day in one of these webinars that before an aircraft takes off, there have been something like 12,000 standards developed by collaboration of international organizations, of which you guys at IATA, I know this from my own time there, have been absolutely driving this ability for us to move around the world. And I also want to say I spent 10 years in international tourism organizations. I was the first president of the World Travel and Tourism Council, which is the global business council for chief executives of the bigger companies. And then I spent 10 years as a gamekeeper turned poacher, or poacher turned gamekeeper, as Assistant Secretary General at the UN World Tourism Organization. So it's against that background I want to make two comments. The first comment is every seminar and webinar that one attends these days, and I think if anything is increasing in today's global economy, it's the number of seminars and webinars. Everyone is talking about a new normal. And I just want to make a point, an overview point. The virus does not attend seminars. And we don't know what the future is going to hold for us. I think what we do know is that it's going to be an immediate 3 to 5 years of pandemic and post-pandemic adjustments. And coupled with that, and this is the issue where I spend all my time now, we have a much bigger challenge, which is a climate crisis, which is existential. And, you know, we have one pandemic. The experts tell us that when climate change really begins to bite, we may well have several pandemics which are occurring at the same time. Gases are being released at this moment in the Arctic that nobody has assumed would ever be released. So, you know, I make this point only to say that life is going to be confusing and brutal. And for all of us who want nice solutions, I think realism tells us we need to be very, very cautious. And the second point I want to make is travel and tourism is driving directly and indirectly 10% of the global economy, and it came to a banging halt. Every projection in everybody's book, even the most bizarre projections, did not assume this situation. So whatever is going to emerge out of it is likely to be quite different from anything any of us has known. And tourism, in a way, is a kind of, I don't think many people want to say this, but I want to be very straightforward. The virus loves travel. People moving from country to country are actually one of the most dangerous challenges, and the industry which we are supporting and working in a positive fashion towards is caught in this challenge of, on the one hand, it wants to restart, and on the other hand, quietly, realists understand we have to start in a way which is safe and which is secure. And to that extent, that's got to be the overriding determinant in the way things are going to develop. So I think we're looking at a 3 to 5 year stop, go, start, change, wearing masks in some places, not wearing masks in other places, and generally global standards, but all of which are going to be affected by activity at the local level. And this is going to be one of our biggest challenges. And travelers in this situation are confused, and they're going to get even more confused because the industry is going to be making pitches to them to try to get them to travel at a time when I believe we really don't know what the situation is going to be like. And what the travelers are telling us, or what I'm hearing, is they would like to see a world which is slightly different when they travel in the future. They would like to see a world which is not worrying about over-tourism, which is not treating people at borders as if they're sheep, which is actually trying to provide a travel experience of the kind that you see in the advertisements, but don't necessarily get, and we all travel, you know what it's like, you don't necessarily get when you're actually traveling. So it's against that background that Carlos and I have been putting together his experience in the travel technology space, and also his experience more latterly from the human code about ensuring that technology is going to be working in the interests of people, and my experience in the travel and tourism sector. And we've created a company, Gianfranco, you'll be very pleased to hear it's a Swiss company, and it's called Wise Travel. And I lived in Geneva for 10 years, and I miss it like hell. It's one of the great places in the world to live. So we created this company, and what we're trying to do is produce an app for travelers, a Wise Travel app, and it's going to contain, at this moment, it's going to be an aggregator. We're not trying to integrate different applications. We're trying to aggregate applications that other people have spent their time putting together and put them in one place, and we call it the app that you never want to leave home without. And it's got 7 pieces in it. It's got a secure wallet for all the information that a traveler will need on a trip, and that's protected by WiseKey's security. So that, people aren't able to hack into the data, because I believe from listening to Carlos over the years, what he's put together is an incredibly secure system of data management. Secondly, it's going to have a unique personal protected ID. And we believe that over time, that will become used for moving people through borders more effectively from some of the work that IATA is doing and WTTC is doing on trying to move people securely and rapidly through border controls. The third thing it's going to have is a health compartment. And there was already reference to the fact that in the future, people are much more likely to require the kind of things we all used to carry when we started traveling, that
I think we lost Jeffrey for a
yellow.
while. Oh, he's back. Go ahead, Jeffrey. I think the connection is getting slow. Jeffrey?
Passport that showed you got your vaccine. The World Travel and Tourism Council has put together a framework of inside our aggregating application, so that travelers will be able to see which companies and which communities are applying the standards in relation today to COVID and tomorrow to whatever else comes along. And they'll be able to make their selection of their trips and do their planning and make their bookings accordingly. The next item is going to have a carbon accounting system, because in the future, everybody who's traveling on aircraft, at least, is going to have to be responsible for their carbon footprint. And we have an agreement with another partner who is providing those services within the application. And this will have an advantage because it will give the passenger a personal carbon accounting system, as distinct from having to use a carbon accounting system which is necessarily provided by a supplier. And they may well get some benefits from that. Christina, in terms of data utilization, they will have the control of their own data. It won't be spread out amongst a lot of suppliers. And then we have an agreement with a group for a green compartment. 15,000 establishments which have been shown to be responsible and in many cases certificated will be available through this app. And last but not least, and the one most important to me, it will have a climate compartment. And we are producing in another organization that I'm working with, a registry for climate neutral ambitions for travel and tourism companies, which is tied into the Paris Agreement and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And we will be registering companies who have carbon reduction plans looking through to 2050. So this is an agglomeration, that's 7 entities inside one consumer-facing application. And you'll also be pleased to know, Gianfranco, I'm calling it the Swiss Army knife of applications. It's going to have, when I was a kid, we used to say the Swiss Army knife even has a device that you can get Boy Scouts out of horses' hooves with. And we think that this app, which we will develop and work with partners, and Pascal, I would like to say we would love to work with IATA to put IATA's standards in there and bring them out to a wider community. And then finally, we will go out over the next 12 months and we will forge partnerships with people who are distributing their own applications to consumers. The banks, the MasterCard. MasterCard had an advertisement I saw the other day where they're enabling 500 million new constituents across the developing world to give them access to finance. Now, we'll never be able to do that sort of thing with our app, but for those of them who are travelers, we think it would be of interest to companies like MasterCard to partner with us and give them this traveler's app. So I'll conclude there, Carlos. I'm looking forward. We will be launching this within the next quarter. This is what I'll call we took advantage of the seminar, I have to say, to bring it into the public domain. But we're very excited about this, and you know, to the extent that Carlos, as a new Swiss, can show excitement. But we're looking forward to really working with friends and with partners. And yes, there's probably a lot of money down the line to be made from the data. I personally, I've reached a stage in life where I'm not really interested in doing that. I think there are some different things we have to do. I think we want a healthier traveling ecosystem. We have to have a greener system. Every policy positioning is telling us that that's where the world's governments are going. The new European Green Deal passed this week. Joe Biden, please Joe Biden, has got a platform which brings America back into the world community on climate and on environmental issues. And we're very optimistic that this is something that will serve a decent purpose, as well as hopefully providing for our grandkids a little bit of money. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. That's great presentation, and we have you have all our support to make this project very successful. I think what is a unique opportunity in this digital transformation era is to be able to work with international experts like you guys are, and embed all that knowledge that you have from very complex sectors into concrete applications. I mean, when we say an app, doesn't mean an app that you just download. It means an entire architecture that benefits individuals or organizations because they can download in their mobile phones. So the beauty of this WISE Travel project is that sits on the WISeKey infrastructure. I mean, I didn't introduce properly WISeKey at the beginning, but just to say that one of the things WISeKey is unique in the world now is that the private key, the cryptographic root key that you need to issue a digitally signed identity, it's now downloaded into 5,000 million devices, operating systems, Apple, Android, all of them, they are hosting already the WISeKey root key. This is in the last 22 years. The cryptographic root key, by the way, is owned by a foundation, a Swiss foundation, in order to isolate the business from the trust model. And when we create an app which requires a public key, so you need two, and you need the private key and the public in order to open the vault, the data, as you will do in a bank, the public key can be downloaded through the form of an app. But this app immediately benefits from the distribution because all the operating system, all the browsers, all of the existing windows to the internet recognizes the WISeKey cryptographic root key. So that's what makes those projects very successful, because from day one, you are immediately trusted, not yet by the international organizations because you don't need, but by the operating system, which are the windows we use to access the internet. So WISE Travel is an extension of that identity management platform that we have been developing, focusing now on the needs of the tourists. The people on there are going to take planes, and they're going to have to, by taking a plane, being able to certify themselves and show their identities and work with the IATA interoperable identity infrastructure that Pascal is building in order to be internationally recognized. Because obviously when I take a plane, my identity has to be recognized not only in the country I am living, but also in the country I am landing. And that requires international interoperability standards. So on that line, we also launched a very specific initiative in Geneva with the Geneva government, and I would like Gianfranco to give us some ideas and updates, which is this idea that if you have done a COVID test and you have an immunity certificate, normally in our days, that immunity certificate is a piece of paper or eventually an email that you get, but it's nothing digital that you can use in order to prove that you have done that immunity test. So we came with the idea to develop an application, which will be also embedded into the WISE Travel application with the name WIShelter, that allows you to digitalize that test. So let's say I go to a doctor, a clinic, and I get an immunity test. I want to be able to show that immunity test real time attached to my identity without giving away my identity, because many of those COVID apps now that they are being developed around the world, they are not very friendly in what concerns the data and geolocation that you are providing, because you are associating your identity with geolocation. We have a big issue in Switzerland where it's a big debate whether Google should know where I am at the same time and I am providing the Swiss COVID identity app information. So what we did was segregating, means that the identity is encrypted with your public key. That means the user encrypts the identity, but the certificate, which is the one that we get, which is anonymized, is digitally signed by that identity, which is a proof of evidence. And then that is demonstrated. So if I go to an IATA airport anywhere in the world, or I board into a plane, I just need to show through a smart QR code, which is generated by that identity, that I have done the immunity test and I am not infecting at that specific moment of the action I am taking. Obviously, it has many issues. Obviously, there are people saying, should we create a distinction between people with immunity and people without immunity? There are obviously all kind of issues that we are trying to address in that project, but for the time being has been an amazing learning curve for us on trying to solve the issues that Christine and Pascal and all of you guys have raised, which is the privacy issue. You know, I am willing to do a lot of things on the digital age, but I don't want my identity to be abused, and I don't want the consent of my private data to be outside my own personal consent. So maybe Gianfranco, some ideas on the health vault and how you see it, the role of Geneva playing on that specific project. And then we can go around you guys on everything we have say. You know, we have still a few minutes to just summarize and put process in our thinking. So Gianfranco, please.
Sure. The idea of this application is really to be able to take into account two major factors. One is the compliance. That is basically that you'll be providing a piece of information that can be trusted and that fulfills the requirements for a particular control. That's one thing. Most of the solutions that people are providing to do that require basically to collect all the data and centralize it, and in some form will give access to the data to whomever needs to control it. As we were saying before, this may create some issues because it creates a single point of attack or failure. It's like a honeypot that will attract also the attack. So what's needed is a solution that will allow basically to have the source of information to be trusted with the required identity and signature that certificates that go along with it. At the same time, provide enough, I would say, confidentiality for the person using that information. I mean, the person who that information belongs to be able to have a private and control of that information. So again, I think the identity and the trust that we can provide to that identity is key, in particular to handling the consent of being able to access, grant access or revoke access to that information. So from that perspective, I think WISekey is very well positioned in terms of the technology and the package they provide, because they provide the traditional public key infrastructure that has that element of trust. At the same time, they're investing in technology, blockchain technology, that will give the transparency that is required to handle basically these issues of ownership of the data and protect the individual from, I would say, unintended usage of that information. So these are the two components. I'd like just to make a comment on Arturo's issue about trust, that blockchain provides a way to do without, I mean, to to eliminate the issue of trust, basically. I think there are two kinds of people we need in the traditional transaction to trust. There are the people who are at the origin of the transaction, and the intermediaries that are handling the different steps of that information that will lead basically to the final result of the transaction. What I believe blockchain is very good at is eliminating the trust that we need to have in the intermediaries, and we can then automate some things, and they can be very difficult to tamper with. But it remains that the origin of the information, the inception of the information in the blockchain needs to be done under a controlled environment. And that's where I think it's very important to have there the processes and the technology to ensure that the information that is provided to the blockchain or recorded in the blockchain in the first place is genuine information, and the people who are actually creating that information are legally doing so. So these are the two aspects, I think, of the trust that need to be clearly understood. It doesn't require necessarily to eliminate all the trusted third parties, but just maybe the intermediaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. I completely agree. And what is interesting then is that we are moving away the data security problem from the digital realm to the physical realm, which I think is where WISekey is doing a lot of work. And I find it extremely interesting because cybersecurity is not a problem anymore in the digital realm. Because the trust problem, as you say, will be in a relationship between the physical Arturo and my digital Arturo. And that process is controlled by me. So as you say, I can cheat on my data, or someone can interfere in that data. But this is a problem in the physical realm, very interestingly.
Yeah, actually on that physical real, we are even pushing the envelope to the next level as we are organizing. Don just did it in Toronto, organized a holographic meeting where actually he was beamed by holographics into a virtual scenario where he spoke in front of physical people. So he was his virtual self addressing a physical conference. And we're going to be doing something in September on the NASDAQ, where the first time ever a virtual person is going to be addressing an investors and analyst meeting. So it shows you the combination. One of the issues, by the way, when we were designing that model with the company that is doing the holographic presentation, is how can I prove that I am the person I am when I being holographically be transported to another city? And this is where the digital identity and the non-repudiation aspect of digital identity is very important, because one of the things we need to know, and I think you all know, but it's important to remark that the only technology on earth that it is non-reputable, means that it has a legal validity in front of a court, is your digital identity. It is not your email, it's not your Twitter account, it's not your Facebook Connect, it's nothing of that. If I send you a digitally signed email and I want to sell your house, my house, and I put a price on it, this is a binding document. It is like it was many years ago for the people that started like I did early. It was the fax. You remember when you sent a fax, the fax had that non-repudiation aspect because the fax machine number was associated to a specific device that proved that you are the person you say you are. So when digital identity has the binding capability, you can basically move the internet to a transactional mechanism. So now, because we are a bit late, but I would like to just summarize maybe all those discussions and maybe give you the floor individually to each of you, so you can give me just in a few minutes, 3-4 minutes each. What do you recommend to the entire panel, and on any observation? Doesn't need to be in agreement, might be in disagreement on anything has been said in this webinar today. So maybe Christina, you are the lady. I'll open with you.
So first, I have to say that you guys are doing an amazing job, because I think one of the issues with respect to digital identity and having this travel, certificate is that it's a network effect, right? And so you need to have everyone accept this certificate, otherwise it has no value. And I'm a person who travels a lot, so even my simple passport, if I go to Israel after having gone to Jordan or Turkey, I have issues, right? And so what I think is kind of interesting about this concept is because of the fact that you guys have worked at the UN and you have a very powerful group, you have the ability uniquely to create this network effect, which I think is really, really critical. And I think that, you know, one of my biggest issues in this space, while cryptography has this protective mechanism and it creates this ability to have these truthful journeys of information across siloed systems, the data entry into those systems has to be really critical. So I actually got COVID from my kids who were at the UN school, and I went for my test for my antibodies, and my test results came back and it said it was a man with a different age and a different birthday. And so I went back to my doctor and said, well, that's not really me. And they said, oh, don't worry about it, those are your results. And I thought, well, I do worry about it because that doesn't really sound like me. And I had watched the video on Theranos and was a little concerned about it. So just because you went through a test and you got the data and it gets put on the blockchain and it's part of the certificate doesn't necessarily mean that the data is correct, right? So, so the technology does require that the endpoints that are accessing the data are accepting it, and that the people putting the data onto this blockchain are utilizing processes. You had a lot of fake tests. You had a lot of tests that didn't work. As a matter of fact, in Spain, they actually had a huge block of tests that were delivered that didn't work. So once again, it goes back to the data, and there has to be processes by which to make sure that this data is accurate, and then have this network effect of accepted entities that will accept that, because then we can travel. And I want a solution to go back to my traveling days. So I'm hoping that this will actually take off and that the network effect actually really engages so that it's accepted everywhere we go, because I think that it's going to be very valuable.
Thank you very much, Christina. I fully agree. I think the building the ecosystem and getting the stakeholders to endorse that effect, that network effect is critical. I also believe, as you say, that the organizations, and they are represented here, they have the firepower to make that happen. And if that is the case, that will be the first time that it's not you know, one of those uncontrolled apps that get viral, and then we don't know who is behind and what is being done, right? So absolutely, that's an important point. So just maybe Pascal, any closing remarks and advice from your side?
Yes, Carlos, you know, we come always to the same conclusion. The problem is not technology, the problem is around people using technology. And so for me, it's all about the governance, it's all about, you know, the awareness of everybody to understand what is at stake, and to understand what are the right behavior that will protect themselves. And so in a way, the risk that you have with a coronavirus is not maybe different from the risk that we have with a digital virus on your mobile. And in a way, it's good to see that this crisis is highlighting the same need about collaboration, multilateralism, and trying to partner between private and public in order to find solutions that are sustainable. And I would agree with Don on the fact that it's a unique opportunity for us to build a new aviation that is sustainable and that will take care also of the planet at the same time that we are taking care of our private information.
Yeah, Pascal, thank you very much. I fully agree with your remarks. Isidore, just on closing the remarks from your side.
Yes, for me is respecting the privacy. This is something which is very important. And just come back on the apps, what Gianfranco was mentioned for the COVID. You know, in Swiss, we had the one application, Swiss COVID, for the tracking. And for me, the people or the government would expect to download or to have these apps installed on so many mobile phone. the people were not comfortable with tracking themselves where we are. You know, it is a mixture in between, and the privacy and the data have to be in secure way. This is first. Maybe the blockchain could help. Yes, definitely. For me, yes, privacy and secure data in a secure way, because when you are tracking any information, you don't know the organization behind what they will do with this relevant information. And this is one of the key issues also for the digitalization, all of this.
Fully agree. Fully agree. Actually, we are following very closely the Swiss COVID situation, as although it is different because the Wise Travel app that Jeffrey refers to is more a convenience app for the tourists. So there is an incentive to do it because there is obviously immediate advantages. For me, the advantage is to know that the next guy next to me has been infected and transferred this data, especially when the geolocation is still stored in Google servers. It's of concern, which basically leads us to the fundamental question. And look what happened with Twitter just a few days ago, you know, that the amazing hack inside Twitter. Shall we trust the current technology development to do such a complex things? Are we ready? Arturo, maybe your views on that. You are in contact with a lot of people on that. Are we ready to deploy things like that, or do we need to change something fundamentally first?
Well, I think that's a very good point. But I think that, you know, we are witnessing a technology disruption in the sense that new technologies, particularly blockchain, but also artificial intelligence, are disrupting the current systems based on intermediaries, based on traditional data security. So we are certainly ready for the disruption. I think what I'm not sure about is whether the rest of the world is. And I think that my message today would be that for all of us, particularly you that are much closer, all of you are much closer to the business world, I think we need to be missionaries of such a disruption. Because I think the danger is that the average citizen sees the current transition toward new technologies as a natural evolution, and it is not such. That is, we are not just improving upon the previous technologies, we are definitely disrupting the previous technologies. And that requires a mental adaptation of people and regulators and government. And I think we need to be extremely proactive, and as I say, missionaries, to convince everybody that that technology is going to come to our rescue, but this technology needs to change completely.
Yeah, and that opens a very interesting knowledge. Is fear the driver of innovation? Because we are in a fear. I still remember I was in the UN. I was actually living that year, the UN, on the year 2000, when we had the 2000 bug, and everybody thought that was the end of the world, and there were so many people just dooming the future. And actually, that was the driver for the web and the decentralized internet. All that happened at that specific time. Really, that's where the Googles of the world emerged. So maybe this fear moment that we are facing here will accelerate innovation and disruption, and we will see emerging the next big players, which will be totally different from what we see now, the current ones. So some conclusions, Jeffrey, on I would say we got the app, but maybe also sustainability, because what you're doing with SunX, I think this is very important and needs to be integrated into the overall scheme here.
Well, everything that we hear tells us that we want that the new normal is going to conform more to what sustainability advocates and climate advocates have been calling for. I'm not yet convinced that the industry is ready to deliver that. I think that most people that I listen to on seminars, their vision of the new normal is how long do we have to have this disruption before we can get back to where we were before it started. And I think that those of us who believe truly that the new normal has to be cleaner and greener, we just have to keep reminding people that the direction we were going in including, and I say this to Pascal, the increasing growth of air transport without a safe synthetic non-pollutant fuel is a kind of madness. And I know, because I've followed this incredibly closely, and you have some of the richest technologists in the world and the most advanced running airlines. You have some of the rich, certainly the richest people in the fuel companies, and their ambition for a safe aviation fuel is like a child. It's ridiculous. And you know, I hear stories about, yes, we could do it, but it'll be more expensive. Well, that's tough. Stick it in the price. If we want to be sustainable, we have to be sustainable. And if the cost is a cost that the consumer has to bear, so be it. And you know, what we are trying to do with the app is to make it easier for the consumer to find those companies which are truly doing things which are green and sustainable, not through our data, but through third-party data. And those companies which have a strong and powerful climate ambition. What we can't do, Christina, is if you go to Jordan and then you go to Egypt, you're still going to have a problem getting into Israel if you use our app, because our app has to conform to government regulations, and the government of Israel is not going to let you in because you have a secure and safe app. And I'll just finish with this. I myself had the experience some years ago. I was on the board of trustees of Shimon Peres's foundation, and I got an invitation to go to Israel, and with a signed letter. He was foreign minister at the time, and I got stopped at the border and questioned for 3 hours because somebody with a similar name to mine had been going through the border at some time previously. So we're not going to be able to do that for you. But I think as travelers, we're hopefully going to be able to help you to navigate the complexity a little better. And it's going to get more complex. So we hope that we'll have something which will actually provide a valuable solution for the traveling public. And that in turn will make it better for the suppliers. And it's not just airlines. There are 14 protocols, I think I might have mentioned, that WTTC has developed for safe travel. And how the hell will any consumer know about those, particularly if they're traveling at the time? They can't get the information. If they're carrying the Wise Travel app, we hope they'll be able to do that. And we hope that'll prepare them for when they're going through borders, when they're looking for places to eat, all of those things.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. So I don't want to take more of your time. We went beyond the hour. I would like just to thank you all for your amazing inputs. You also have been very active answering the questions. So thank you very much for the Q&A. I would like also to thank particularly Gianfranco, because he's actually accessing us from his holidays. So thank you for sparing your time with us. And everybody for your amazing inputs. Again, this is a teamwork. We know each other very well. We're going to meet in many places, Davos, events, and virtually until for now. So if you have any inputs on anything we have discussed or any recommendation, you're most welcome, and we'd like to maintain the bilateral relations with you as well as we progress on our individual projects. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you, the audience. Despite the time, we still have 76 people online. So thank you very much. It's a hot afternoon everywhere in Europe. So thank you for all, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, friends. Thank you.
You guys.
I see you.
You